I will now call this meeting to order. Our first order of business is to adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting. Commissioners, is there a motion to adopt the final agenda?
I'll move to adopt the final agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those opposed signify by saying aye. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. The motion does carry. Our next order of business is to adopt the minutes from the April 19th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. Commissioners, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Excellent. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion does carry. Thank you very much. We will now move on to our discussion item.
We have
Do you
two
have minutes
sets of
from
minutes.
March?
2 minutes
Oh,
to approve, Chair.
Because we missed last week's.
The April 19th is
Or
the makeup,
2
but
months.
we didn't have enough time.
that's right.
Last
Yep,
time?
yep. So we do want to approve the 19th Planning Commission meeting,
Agreed.
or the 3rd rather, May 3rd. Thank you.
I'll
Thank
make
you.
a
Thank
motion
you.
to approve the meeting minutes of May 3rd, 2020.
Superb. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That motion does carry also. Our first discussion item on our agenda tonight is item 3.1, which is a preliminary plat and rezoning for Brookmore residential development. This item does include a public hearing. Before the opening of the public hearing, I'll now turn it over to planner Isaac Peterson for staff presentation. Isaac?
Thank you, Chair, members of the commission. Tonight for your consideration is the preliminary plat and rezoning proposal for the Brookmore development, as the Chair mentioned. Just to give everyone a quick recap here, starting back in January, the city and the applicant had a neighborhood meeting on January 2nd, 2022, going over a concept plan for the proposed Brookmore development. On a January 18th, 2022, the Planning Commission reviewed that sketch plat, and on January 24th, 2022, City Council also reviewed the sketch plat, provided comment. Since then, the applicant has submitted a preliminary plat request and rezoning application for the subject property. Tonight, we will be considering that preliminary plan rezoning request for consideration of recommendation to the council, and a public hearing will be held for the application. The subject property is located at 925 78th Street and 1100 78th Street. It's just south of Madeline Trail, or the Madeline Trail development, in Hartwood, and just north of Savannah Valley and the Holy Family School. It's also immediately adjacent to the extension of Cochia Lane to the north. The subject property is 34 acres, approximately 25.7 acres are developable. And the subject property is currently zoned agricultural. And the applicant has requested to rezone the property as a PUD, or planned unit development, with R1 low-density residential underlying zoning. Currently, the site is tillable farmland, as you can see here. There are 2 homes on the subject property, one located right here, and the existing property owner's home, which is over here on it's shifted here, but on the east side of the property, along with some accessory buildings, all of which are proposed to be removed with the proposed development. Looking through the lens of the city's 2040 comprehensive plan, the area is guided to be low-density residential land. That guidance provides for low-density housing in the range of 2.25 to 6 units per acre. With the proposal shown, there are 80 single-family homes on 25.7 developable acres of property, which would be 3.1 units per acre, falling within that threshold. Again, the subject property or properties are zoned currently as ag, and they're proposed to be rezoned to a PUD with R1 underlying zoning. So here, and we can jump back to this, is the proposed layout of the preliminary plat before you this evening. Again, there's a extension or a cul-de-sac with 27 homes located on the west side, a park shown as Outlot A here, the extension of Cochia Lane, and additional homes on the east side of the subject property. The proposed bulk regulations brought forward by the applicant proposed for a minimum lot area for the individual lots of 8,936 square feet, minimum lot width of 68 feet, minimum lot depth of 130 feet, side yard setbacks of 9 feet on each side, a front yard setback of 25 feet, rear yard setback of 30 feet, and a maximum impervious surface area of 4,500 square feet. For comparison, below here are standard R1 zoning standards that shown here with 12,000 square foot lot areas, and below is the Madeline Trail bulk regulations that's for the neighborhood located immediately to the north of the subject property. The proposed bulk regulations shown here are generally consistent with that Madeline Trail approval. In terms of buffers and screening, the applicant is proposing a 25-foot landscape buffer on double-fronted lots, with proposed 15-foot landscape buffers on corner lots sitting on Cochia Lane on the extension. The buffer planting is to meet the requirements on all double-fronted lots for landscaping. Shown here is the landscaping plan proposed by the applicant. See here the double-fronted lots along the Cochia extension, shown throughout, boulevard trees, an adjacent buffer, and this open area, outlotted area, or rather on lots to the north, and visible throughout. The Planning Commission and Council indicated at the time of the sketch plat review that an 8-foot berm was likely not necessary, but did want to see some enhanced screening. The applicant isn't proposing a berm within the double-fronted lot landscaping area. Staff's recommendation is that the Commission consider whether they are, however, proposing additional plantings in that buffer zone than what would typically be required in lieu of the berm. The Commission should consider whether the additional plantings within the buffer area are appropriate in lieu of a break in elevation via berm. With respect to parks, based on the development of the proposed lots, 3.73 acres of parkland dedication would be required per the code. The comprehensive plan does not specifically call for a park on this property. The applicant has, however, proposed a 3.05 acre park, shown in Outlot A here, to be used to satisfy some of the parkland dedication requirement. In addition, the excess would then be covered with a parkland dedication fee in the amount of estimated amount of $71,400. At the time, based on prior conversations with the Commission leading up to this, there was the desire brought forward to locate a park here with the development to the north occurring. So the applicant is still showing a park. in part because the property owner requested or identified a desire to propose a park there to memorialize their relative that lived on the property. The proposed park was brought forward to the Parks and Rec Committee in February at the time of sketch plat. At that time, the Park and Rec Committee recommended payment of fee in lieu of parkland dedication, so removing the park and utilizing only a fee based on the following rationale. One being that the comprehensive plan did not call for a park on the property. Madeline Creek Park is within 0.5 miles, and the rec center is within 0.7 miles. The anticipated programming for the park, so the build out of the park would not be constructed within the next 5 to 7 years. And concerns regarding the size of the proposed park, meaning that it was less than the 5 acres that's typically sought by the city. Staff does believe that there are still benefits to the proposed park location as shown. The applicant is preserving about a dozen significant trees on the park property. There would be the preservation of a small wetland that would otherwise be filled on the proposed park property. The location would serve as a buffer to existing homes to the northwest, as well as along the new Cochia Lane collector roadway that's being proposed with the extension. And if there is the potential that if the park would be removed and would be developed as houses instead of a park, that it would trigger the requirement for a secondary access based on the fire code to 79th and a half Street to the north or Lilac Lane to the north, so that the park is serving the proposed park is serving a few different factors there that staff wanted to identify. With respect to trails, the applicant is proposing to extend a trail to the south along Cochia and get across where it runs along the west side of Cochia towards the Holy Family. In addition, there's another trail shown on Outlot F here on the west side of the cul-de-sac. You may recall at the time of sketch plat that trail was shown over on Lot 14. The applicant has relocated that, working with staff based on some neighbor concerns and impacts, potential impacts to the property over here, just to bring it over and more align with the open bulb of the cul-de-sac in Savannah Valley to the south. In addition, the applicant is also proposing to meet all sidewalk requirements. There's a sidewalk run on one side of each street, along with double sidewalk along the Kerber Court cul-de-sac, wrapping around to Outlot A to the north. In terms of access, the site is proposing to be accessed from an extension of Cochia Lane here, up here, the extension of Obsidian Way from the north to the south, Jade Lane from the north to the south, and again Obsidian Way from the north to the south through the Madeline Trail development. There are 27 homes located on the Kerber Court cul-de-sac that's shown. Again, that does currently meet the fire code requirement for a single point of access, as it's under 30 homes. Again, Cochia Lane is proposed to be connected through the development, so extending all the way from the south to the north, all the way up to 5 and up to through 78th Street. That connection has been identified by the city for quite some time to be done. In addition, all local streets that are shown on the plat do meet the 60-foot right-of-way requirement of the city. As the commission may recall, at the time of sketch plat, there was concern and question about potential speed and level of traffic along Cochia Lane with the extension. During the sketch plat review, To evaluate that, the city did contract with Bolton and Mink Engineering to perform a traffic study and review, what are we going to see here, and what are some mitigation recommendations to potentially address, long-term items with the Cochia Lane extension. With that traffic study that was included within your packet, Bolton and Mink did a warrant analysis of the intersection of 78th Street and Cochia Lane. They did note that a four-way stop at 78th Street and Cochia Lane would not be warranted on opening day, but a two-way stop with side control on 78th Street would be warranted. They did recommend future consideration of a mini or compact roundabout, which is a surmountable roundabout at the intersection of Cochia and 78th, or potentially the new intersection of Cochia and the new Kerber Court roadway, along with consideration of installing a raised crosswalk or speed table, so kind of like a speed hump with a crosswalk across it at the new intersection of Cochia Lane and Kerber Court. Considering incorporating a chicane or curved road design into Cochia Lane with the new extension, utilizing consistent vertical landscaping elements along the roadway to kind of close in the feel and slow people down rather than having it wide open. Considering using a dynamic speed display or a driver feedback sign that tells you your speed along Cochia Lane, and consideration of installing a centerline striping double yellow line along Cochia Lane and the shoulder to reduce the lane widths down to 10 feet again to kind of constrain the feel as you're driving on Cochia. So based on the prior discussion, staff working with Bolton and Mink did evaluate looking at a potential roundabout at the intersection of Kerber Court and the Cochia Lane extension shown here. In looking at the roundabout placement, it would impact the adjacent proposed lots. Roundabout would need these center splitter islands to come through. And in addition, it's a cul-de-sac and not a through street per se, there'd be limited side traffic volume to support the roundabout. Something that does occur when you have a roundabout that doesn't have equal traffic volume is people tend to, especially in this case, go through the roundabout or still take the roundabout speed higher. That could be a concern if placed here because the compact roundabouts are surmountable and not curbed around the edge. Based on that evaluation, staff's recommendation is that in terms of a longer term solution, the preferable location would likely be to consider a compact roundabout at the intersection of 78th Street and Cochia Lane with the change in traffic pattern. The applicant is currently proposing to utilize either bump outs or, in this case, center median islands curbing to constrain driver feel. They're currently proposing to place landscaping on both sides of Cochia Lane to, again, constrain driver feel with vertical landscaping elements. Staff is still working with the applicant on the Cochia Lane road design and associated speed and traffic mitigation plans, considering those other factors and recommendations that were brought up within the Bolton and Mink study. Staff's recommendation is that the plan extension of Cochia Lane be designed and satisfied prior to the city considering final plat. This were to be approved. With respect to site utilities, sanitary sewer is proposed to be stubbed from the Madeline Trail and Savannah Valley neighborhood from the south and from the north. Water is proposed to be connected from Madeline Trail and Savannah Valley as well. The proposed plan does show sanitary sewer and water layouts consistent with the city's engineering standards. For stormwater, the city engineer is currently satisfied with the proposed stormwater plans. There are a few final details that need to be addressed, but it's generally consistent with the city standards. The subject property is located within the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District and would be subject to their rules and meet their requirements for approval. The plan does show stormwater features, wetlands, and buffers on outlots, which would be required to be deeded to the city and not encroach on private lots. So overall, staff is generally supportive of the proposed preliminary plat and rezoning as shown. There are a number of recommended conditions of support that staff has outlined, those being that the rezoning from agricultural to a planned unit development with R1 low-density residential zoning shall be approved at concurrent to final plat approval. The applicant shall address to the city's satisfaction all items outlined within the May 13th engineer's memo and May 13th staff memo, as well as all additional engineering items resulting from any modification of the preliminary plat prior to final plat approval. The applicant shall provide adequate landscaping and buffering along all double-fronted lots adjacent to Cochia Lane to the satisfaction of the city based on the commission and council's feedback. That the applicant shall submit construction plans for the construction of Cochia Lane extension through the subject property, including speed mitigation elements to the satisfaction of the city prior to final plat consideration. The applicant shall construct or pay for the construction of Cochia Lane as a collector roadway along the length of the development property. The applicant shall provide the city with copies of all homeowners association and covenants for the development, which are subject to the review and approval of the city attorney. That the applicant shall comply with all applicable regulations and conditions prescribed by the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District and receive all applicable approvals. That the applicant shall enter into a development agreement with the city for this development prior or concurrent with final plat approval. That the applicant shall provide a letter of credit as established by the development agreement for all public improvements associated with the development. The applicant shall obtain all necessary city, county, PCA, and other regulatory agency approvals and permits prior to construction. That the applicant shall submit title work along with final plat submittal and will comply with the city attorney's plat opinion. And that the applicant shall submit the final plat to the city within 90 days of the city council's approval of the preliminary plat. So again, Mr. Chair, this is a public hearing, and all neighbors within 350 feet have been notified of tonight's meeting, and it looks like we do have some people in attendance, and we appreciate them being here. The notice was also published within the May 5th Chan Villager. With that, I can stand for any questions, and I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Thank you very much, Isaac. Yeah, this is the next step in the process for this particular project, and it's the opportunity for all that have a concern, have questions or concerns on this project. So I'll now open it up the public hearing, and for those that would like to speak, merely come to the podium, state your name and address. And
Good evening, Chair Iverson and members of the commission. My name's Josh Metzer with Lennar. Good to be back with you tonight. It's been, I think, 5 months or so since we were here last for the sketch plan. And Isaac, thank you for the summary and staff report. Not a lot has changed from the sketch plat till now. Isaac did point out we had moved the trail over on the southwest corner. We had moved that over about 2 lots as requested by members of the commission. There was previously a pond shown, maybe if you want to throw the plat up, Isaac. On the west side, north of our lots, yeah, but just above where it says sheet 3. There was previously potentially a pond shown there on the sketch plat. That's been removed. We're basically handling stormwater in that area through a swale and some catch basins. And obviously the median improvements on Cochia are some additional items added. Since the sketch plat, what we didn't have at the time was a grading plan. And the big item of concern, I think, for the folks to the south was basically the visual kind of looming homes of ours above theirs. And due to the grading, the elevation of the street and gradation of the site, all of the homes along, so you'll see them listed as lots 1 through, I believe that's 11, on the south side of Kerber Court there, will be ramblers, meaning full basements. So from the rear, you'll see a main level and a second level. You wouldn't see like a third level walkout. So that will at least help somewhat with the elevation of the homes from the rear. Actually, all these homes on that court are either rambler or lookout, with the exception of the 2 at the very west end of the cul-de-sac. We do have 2 walkouts there. And we even had to build a retaining wall to keep them at walkouts. So hopefully that will ease some concerns of the neighbors. Also, by having a 25-foot front setback rather than a 30-foot front setback, we're pulling those homes 5 feet further from neighbors to the north and south. And yeah, like I said, we're hopeful that this will address a lot of the concerns. I'm sure it's not perfect for everybody, but we hope that it's a good compromise. And aside from that, we're excited to be here and happy to have another opportunity in Victoria.
Very good. Thank you.
You can speak to, obviously there's the visual impact. I would be a little concerned with water that's going to flow into those, back towards those houses. So, you mentioned swales and stuff, but in the back of those, between 1 and 11, is there anything special as far as like drainage?
There
so
is.
that water's not going to come back towards the.
If I may interject, just because the public hearing is currently open, just to avoid any back and forth and allow members of the public to speak and have their voices heard prior to the planning commission discussion. Sorry.
Well, he was up speaking.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So I guess we'll wait for questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Thanks.
Yep. Thank you very much. Is there anyone, neighbors or property owners?
Thank you for hearing me. My name is Jenny Jeanette. I live at 7955 Narcissus Court. I am the far west side of this property, and we were here for the neighborhood preliminary sketch plat meeting, and we received this beautiful thing with a pond, which has now been removed. It's now a sandbox. I don't know the technical name, but it's a sandbox versus an actual pond. So that is different. And then all of our trees, it's not in this drawing, but all of the trees that we're going to divide our property from the new property are being removed. And none of the ones that were on the proposed preliminary sketch plan are being added. So they've been removed. And we have concerns that we are now seeing a sandbox and a backyard versus trees and a pond and a backyard. So those are our concerns about this latest development, and thank you for your time.
Very good. Thank you for your. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on the on this project? Mr. Paulson?
Yes, sir. I haven't been here in a long time. Thank you for your time tonight. I just heard about this development for the last few minutes.
If you
I
could
guess my message to you is,
if you could state your name and address, please, sir.
Jim Paulson, Victoria, Minnesota, Fairway Point. I guess my question to you tonight is, how much value do you think this development is going to add to the rest of the city? You, and you alone, are the arbiter of density. and density equals dollars. And other question I would ask you is, do you want Victoria to look like everywhere else? Or do you want something special? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on? Last opportunity. Okay. Hearing no one else, I will now close the public hearing. Is there a motion to close that?
I'd like to make a motion to close the hearing.
Is there a second?
A second.
All of those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. I will now open the floor for the Planning Commission to discuss. Commissioners, any questions? Any
Again,
concerns?
I would like to understand the drainage as it relates to 1 through 11 back against the homes that sit much further below them.
Sure. Isaac, I don't know if you have the utility plan handy. If not, I can talk through it.
I do not.
So on both sides of Kerber Court, in the rear yards, and throughout, even on the east side, we have a series of catch basins and storm sewer pipe. So the lots will be graded to, basically bring stormwater to those swales and low points where we have a series of catch basins. And those catch basins will bring the stormwater through pipes either out to the street to get captured in other catch basins or be piped directly to the pond on the west side.
Okay.
I guess one thing I also didn't mention is you could see on the pre-plat there, everything west of Cochilla is kind of outlined in a checkered box. So our first phase, we'll be doing this in 2 phases. Our first phase will be everything Cochilla and west, and second phase will be next year of everything east of Cochilla. I guess to answer the question on the ponding and the trees on the west side, so what's being proposed here is a filtration basin. So this will actually hold more water than an infiltration basin would. Infiltration basins are the ones that you'll normally see that, it's graded and dug out like a pond, but it's often dry. And that's by design. It's infiltration basins the idea is to get the water infiltrated into the ground. Here it's a filtration basin. I believe it's due to a combination of soils and wanting to control our rate of runoff from the site and keep your water on site for a certain amount of time before it's passed on to the pond to the south. So the filtration basin will, it will filtrate some water a little bit, but some water will ultimately be passed to the south, to the pond in the, I forget the name of the development to the south, but, and our engineer with Westwood, John Bender, is on the call. So John, if I'm getting way too over my skis here on technical items, please let me know. Oh, I'm sorry, and trees. I did notice myself that there were a number of trees shown to be planted on the sketch plan along the west. I believe they're probably not shown on there now because of the grading of the pond coming so close to the west, but I'll be asking Westwood to take a look at possibility of getting some trees planted in there along that west property line. I'm sure we could make something happen, but we'll definitely take a look at that to see if it's possible to get some more trees planted in there.
Josh, I think it would be good to address residents' concerns about the screening. If we're taking some away, we should put some back. There's also the issue that the neighborhood to the north of the west section had concerns about the number of lots that in the new subdivision that will back up to the larger existing lots in the old section, and that was the impetus for having an outlot so that they had one consistent neighbor city to deal with. Now potential for 3 different neighbors along their one property line. And so it appears that you've gone to just platting the lots go all the way up to the property line. Isaac and Josh, are we going to secure a true landscape easement so that that continuously stays that way, in addition to the drainage easement that you plan on putting in there?
I can address that. Commissioner Ravansky, Chair, members of the commission, the removal of a portion of that outlot was in part an impetus of staff's recommendation because of the sliver. In practice, a lot of times what we see happen is that it's challenging to access those locations, and there are periodic troubles with enforcement action on outlots such as that. Staff's recommendation would be, in lieu of having the physical property there, have a drainage and utility easement and landscaping easement to ensure that the preservation and there's no structures built on that, which would be a routine check at the time of a permit submittal.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
I guess I would speak to I guess I can address the screening question. Yeah, certainly, like I had mentioned, we'll see what we can do to get some trees back on that west property line. It's some fairly steep grades over there, but our engineers are good, and I'm sure they can figure something out. As far as the tree preservation easement, Isaac and I have talked about that a little bit. We were not planning to have a homeowners association for this community because there's really no private common features in this community that require maintenance or monitoring. So I guess obviously we're going to be planting these trees as part of the landscape plan, and we will certainly have disclosures in the sales packages to these lots in the north that their lots contain buffer trees intended for that buffer. I'm sure 95% of people that buy our homes would appreciate having that buffer and would want to maintain that. So I don't know if that is something that, Isaac, if the city would be able to help in the long term monitor some sort of easement, because it'd be tough to.
The city does have current situations on past development approvals with similar easements. Thinking maybe Waterford would be a recent example. There are buffer trees, and in many cases where there's berming along collector roads, where there's similar joint purpose easements that serve landscaping and drainage and utility easements. So we can assist with that and draft something.
Thank you.
Okay, and thanks, Isaac, for the segue now into the question of berming. One of the topics that we came up with last time we saw this before was there's a request to waive the berming, and I haven't really seen any justification why we would do that. The berming that exists on the west side of the high school and an outlot is not 8 feet tall. It's lower than that, and I think we talked about trying to match that berming and then put plantings in addition to what planting is being talked about. And given that this is going to be a pretty heavily trafficked road, that berming is going to become more and more important. Anybody who's seen where we butt up to Chaska in the south, where all of those homes have no berm, and there's traffic that's moving in there 45 miles an hour despite everything that's been done on that strip to slow traffic down. This is our one chance to start talking about this to get it right now.
Yep.
And it's been well established that any development that's been through here and an extension of Cochia, these are the issues that have to be dealt with. And it's our responsibility to make sure that our citizens here get that representation.
Sure. Yeah, I would, Commissioner Ravansky, Chair, members of the commission, I would direct the question to the applicant who's requesting the waiver.
Right, and I think it's maybe not a full waiver of any berm, but certainly relief from the 8-foot berm requirement. Again, not an engineer, so I don't know the exact numbers, but to get it to an 8-foot berm, you're talking more than just an 8-foot wide strip of land. You get up to 8 feet, you're going to eat up a lot of land real quick. So I think we can work with our engineer to get some sort of berming in there. And again, we were offering to put well, quite a bit more than the minimum plantings required especially along the east side of Cochia, north of Kerber, and on the south side for the corner lots as well. But if we start getting too high with that berm, that easement required for that berm is going to grow and grow and grow. And
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. And where the proposed park is, I mean, that's probably less of a need, or even maybe not desirable to put a berm there because just of the land use. I'm thinking in terms of residents that will have headlights going in their back windows, the noise, the Bolton and Menck study, while comprehensive on counting cars, didn't seem to really address who the cars were. And for anybody who lives along there, they know that anytime you're from 3:30 on in the afternoon, it's the gumball rally with kids leaving the school as fast as they can get out of the parking lot, and they're doing double left turns onto Cochia and creating a traffic situation. And we just don't want to keep perpetuating that problem for new houses that have not lived with that experience in the time that they've been there. So, well, an 8-foot berm is the city standard. We should give some consideration to, matching the existing topography of the neighborhoods to the south, which don't have an 8-foot berm, but do have a small berming and screening in terms of pine trees, et cetera.
And you were referencing a berming, it's opposite
So if you,
Cochia from the
if
high
you
school.
if you look west of the high school, there's an outlot that exists on the west side of Cochia along the essentially borders Savannah Valley on the east side. That there is a berm that runs all along that stretch in between the monuments.
Okay, yeah, we can have a look.
Yeah, thank you. Very good, Isaac.
Well, we don't want to encroach on a decision that's already been made, or I guess was in the process of having been made by Parks and Rec. But let's discuss that in lieu of a payment, actual park. And if we can take a look at, one of the considerations was the smaller size overall of the park. But any young children in that area, to get to any one of the two parks that were identified as being an option, I think that should be revisited also. And again, the Park and Rec people have made their decision on that, or have made a statement on that, and would prefer not to have. But it would seem for the benefit of the potential residents with the probability of small children, that would seem to be a requirement from my standpoint. So to go through that again,
Talking about programming for Outlot Park, maybe?
Outlet A.
Outlet A.
Outlot A. Okay.
Big-
I wasn't quite sure what you were talking about. Thank you.
I got a question for U.S. Homes. Behind on Kerber Court, behind 1 through 12, is that a retaining wall or fence? Or is that just drainage? There's like a line.
Yep, yeah, that's a retaining wall. Basically, the grade change, even naturally out there today, once you're at about the cul-de-sac, today it slopes down pretty quickly.
I'm talking over from 11 to 1, behind those houses, Isaac.
Commissioner Kuhn, chair, members of the commission, I believe that actually refers to a water line, a raw water line that's right there, this dashed line
Okay.
right here. that's in that outlot.
Up to the north of there.
No,
Where it says sheet 3.
Yeah. So that's just highlighting a swale, a 3-foot wide swale that's going to be graded in to channel stormwater.
All right. And my other concern, especially in this cul-de-sac with the 25-foot front yard setback, what's the city easement? Because you got the sidewalks going all the way around that cul-de-sac. When you start doing snow removal through there and pushing snow and then sidewalks, how much room basically between the 25-foot and
Commissioner Kuhn, Chair, members of the commission, so if there were to be a 25-foot setback, the typical front yard drainage and utility easement is 10 feet front, 10 feet rear, and 6 feet on the side, so there's 15 feet, although the sidewalk would be contained within city right-of-way rather than within that easement.
I think generally you have about 14 feet from edge of curb, from back of curb to the front lot line. So
And then you're
in addition to
25 feet.
Yeah, so you get 25 plus 14.
So Josh, will the 25-foot setback, will that be to like the front of a porch and then maybe the building itself is maybe another 8 feet behind that? Or
Yeah, so
is it 25 feet to straight to the edge of the building?
It depends on the floor plan. Some of our floor plans have a porch out in front of the garage or vice versa. It'll be to the first vertical piece of the house, whether it's porch or garage.
So I'm trying to remember the models, but the bulk of them have porches, don't they?
They do. Some will, again, even, with a specific floor plan, it might have a porch that comes out flush with the garage. It might be in front or even behind. But generally, they're within, the face of the porch and the face of the garage are usually within 6 feet or less. Some are more, but the bulk of what we build they're comparable.
Well, we do have residents in attendance tonight that have a 25-foot setback on their house, and they get creative with where they put their snow. And they know who they are, because they're looking at someone who also has a 25-foot setback.
Is that what Savannah Valley is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
In part, referencing some of the comments that was made by the gentleman earlier, what are the price points?
Ask me last week, ask me
Anticipated.
next week, it'll be a different answer. And that's something we wish we could keep under control. But right now, I would say, so if you look at Lake Town, which is our community, obviously just south of Deer Run, I think starting point is in the upper fives, unfortunately. I mean, it's, they're not going to be what you call cheap. So probably I would say mid to upper fives would be the low range, and going up from there, probably approaching, and especially proximity to downtown and Highway 5, the prices will probably get up in there, within the 7s and maybe even 8s, depending on floor plan and finishes, of course.
So if you went with a higher density or lower density, lower less lots, you're going to be looking at $1 million houses in there.
Well, these
If we said, let's put half the number of houses in that area, which would make the lot sizes similar to what's on the north side that it backs up to, you're gonna need $1 million to build a house on one of those lots.
And we're going to need new plans. We don't build homes
Right.
above. These are
Right.
the highest end homes that we
Right,
build.
I know
so
that.
It'd be a different builder.
It'd be a whole different plan, whole different sketch plan. We'd scrap it out and have to find somebody else to build in there or whatever. But I'm just saying, if we don't want this many number of houses in this area to look like, to make it, look less crowded, the house prices are gonna have to be up higher because it's less property that are gonna go in there. You gotta divide all the development costs amongst less houses.
And Isaac, correct me if I'm wrong, if we get below 3 units per acre density, Met Council doesn't like that type of density.
Chair, Commissioners, so the guidance is, for the city of Victoria's low-density residential future land use guidance is 2.25 to 6. Josh is correct. The Met Council does get very upset with communities with lower density housing situations that dip below 3 units per acre for new housing proposals.
People want to buy them.
Okay, but Isaac, if we could go back to the question of the park.
Yeah, let's talk about
I think, from what I've seen, the park, it seems that staff is generally supportive of the idea of a park, even though the Park and Rec Committee has sort of said, hey, it doesn't fit in our comprehensive plan. I didn't get the feel that, if that went forward, and there seems to be justifiable reasons for it to go forward, that it's necessarily a bad thing.
Commissioner Vansky, Chair, members of the Commission, yes, that is correct. There are, based on those points that I made earlier, there are some underlying concerns if the park were to go away. When we had the development approval to the north and the feedback was provided at that time that, hey, maybe a park would be desired in this area if it were to develop. We kind of took that and ran with it with the applicant. And it's kind of a perfect storm with the property owner as well who wished to see that space preserved. But staff is still generally supportive of the park based on those items that I mentioned earlier.
Is there any way to see an overview of the existing parks in the area in relation to this community? Because what I'm hearing about the park is Parks and Rec does not support it. There's some trees there, but the cost of those preservation of those trees is in the $220,000 range. Isn't that the economics of the in lieu of?
Commissioner Murray.
I don't know the numbers.
Yeah,
but
I'm not sure what the additional dedication may be in that amount if they were to pay the additional fee, which is $105,000 per acre based on the city's code.
I just think, we're going to have to pay to construct a park. A big portion of that land is wetland, which we'll either have to fill or not construct, which probably won't be constructed. I see the benefits, of course, to the development is that you can't do homes across the wetland unless you do something there anyway. So it makes sense for the developer to certainly dedicate that land. But I kind of agree with Parks and Rec. If you don't have a park big enough and it's difficult to get to, is it benefiting the community? And there's a comp plan of where we put the parks for a reason, because we want everyone to have one within range. So I just really want to understand where are they, and are we getting closer park for people, or is it really not making that much of a difference for many houses before we make a decision here?
So the referenced parks, Commissioner Murray, Chair, members.
There's also Savannah Valley, which wasn't referenced.
Right. So there's the Savannah Valley, say Pocket Park right here, which is, and we're blue. 0.22 acres. Immediately to the south, what was also referenced was the rec center, which is about 0.75 miles away along Cochia to the south, and then the Madeline Trail Park along Highway 5 here, north 78th Street.
Katy Hills isn't referenced, and that's pretty close proximity.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, if we're missing some, because it seems like there are more.
Katy Hills is just east of the fire station. Right there.
And for reference, the Katy Hills Park is 0.96 acres. The applicant is proposing a
1.5.
a 3.05 acre park.
Buildable is going to be,
Yeah, deducting the wetland,
Wetland.
which is probably about point, yeah, 0.5.
Can I easily walk there from this neighborhood? I don't think so.
yeah, that's what I didn't,
Well, there's not going to be parking. I mean,
you have to walk there.
yeah, it's not big enough to support parking.
There's no way to get there unless you walk there. So,
I mean, these other parks though, right? They're not that easy to walk through if you're.
To me, I think the park should be there because you got the development to the north that we just approved.
it has no park.
That has no
That doesn't
park.
have a park.
And you have this whole development, and, you know, if you got a 5-year-old that wants to go to a park or wants to go somewhere, you aren't gonna walk them a half a mile or a mile to, you know, they'll be playing over, you know,
They'll go to the,
crossing streets, and, I mean, 70, you have to cross 78, which is gonna be crazy after these two developments go in. I think the park needs to be there, or it needs to be dedicated to that, whether it gets built in 5 years or 7 years, it still should, the land should be dedicated to it.
Nice to have.
I would also certainly be unfamiliar with the process that they go through. I was a little surprised to see that they did reject it at the same time. But, you know, it apparently was based on the size of the property that they had to work with. And in terms of any sort of design of equipment for the playground at the same time too, so. But I think we're in agreement that should go back, and our recommendation is that we would prefer to see.
I don't think you're speaking for the whole commission. So we're not in agreement,
We're not.
no. But
We can vote.
We could vote.
yeah, I'm just trying to understand it. I just think that we, you know, you have to have the money to develop the park. And what I'm hearing is it's going to be 5 to 7 years to do that. That's most of the families that move in are going to be young children when they move in. By the time they get, you know, the park developed, is there a possibility of changing the dates of developing the park with Parks and Rec and prioritizing it sooner?
Yeah, Commissioner Murray, Chair, members of the commission. So that process is done within the Park and Rec Committee's CIP project or process. So they've just approved this past year the 5-year plan for park creation. So now developments that are being brought forward are going to occur after that 5-year plan. But yes, there is the potential to go up and above, but the city would have to review that through the CIP process.
I would be curious to see how it actually gets designed. I mean, if you know, an architect can kind of do a layover on that site. I mean, if it's only going to be a swing set, you know, what's that? That's not enough to support the site. I also think with traffic on Cochilla, I get a little bit nervous about kids running into Cochilla, so there needs to be additional measures made to create a barrier for the safety. I mean, is that enough? I don't know. Maybe it is. But if a park is there, you know, it needs to be shifted to the west as much as possible. And does that work with the wetlands that are there? I don't know.
Well, Isaac, what would be the alternatives here? The alternative is that we don't get the land dedicated. The developer pays additional fees to the city, and then more houses are plunked down and filling in a wetland area, correct?
Yeah, to add, and one of the initial concepts that we reviewed with the applicant, again, tying back to that
Right.
2 points of access.
This is where we had the violation of the access of not, you know, there's only space for 3 more homes. And then we have a collector road problem with the fire department, correct?
Correct.
So, you know, if the land isn't dedicated, then most likely is there's 3 additional houses that are built, and the city gets a check, and there isn't any land, correct?
Correct.
Let's see if I could provide some more information to give a full perspective. Our previous concept, I believe, had 7 homes here if there was not a park. And there would be a connection, a street connection to the neighborhood to the northwest. So while we like to build homes in this situation, it would open up a whole different can of worms. And, you know, for us, with tot lots that we've designed in our some private parks in our HOA communities, we've gotten, and we could send some examples, but we've gotten pretty substantial tot lots and playgrounds in much smaller areas. And the site doesn't have to be bisected like this with the trail. The trail this is just for illustrative purposes. The trail could go anywhere you want in there. So, I mean, that's, without the wetland, I think we're still over 2 acres of land. And these trees that are there, some of those will be removed, some will remain. So you will have some natural segmentation with those trees something could be creatively done with that. But of course, I'm not on your park commission or park board, so I don't know what goes into all this, but I would think there's plenty of space to do a number of things in this park. And like I said, we can share some examples with
one of the driving factors of moving the trail is that, you know, this is going to be the first subdivision you're going to be developing to the west, correct? So west of Cochilla, the small strip, I guess it's on what would be on sheet 3. That's where you plan on developing that first, correct?
Right.
Right. And then so the new families are going to come down and find that they have no park. They're going to come down to Savannah Valley and use the 0.22 acre park that's there, which, for those who are now students of history, that park has been there for almost 20 years, and new families are coming into that neighborhood all the time, and they love that park. I mean, and for those who were part of the history, like myself and Christian, there was a contentious issue about putting a park there in the first place, and now it's the gem of that community, mainly because we've kept our hooligans away from our parks and they have other places to go. So I mean, I'm supportive of this park, but one of the things that I would layer a suggestion on is that there's talk of a road going into that park and using that road to build a potential speed reduction on Cochilla Lane. I think we should give serious consideration to having that done during development so that we use as many available means as we can to slow traffic on the extension of Cochilla down. The number one concern I hear from residents that are talking to me about this, and these are even residents who don't live in Savannah Valley any longer, is that they're worried about the speed that's going to come down Cochilla, because there's now going to be an access point through these clusters of homes that take people off of Bavaria and bring them down, and then route them off in their way down to Target and Chaska and the whole community down there. So,
You know, we talked about not needing a berm there and needing it more on the east, but I would argue that maybe it's more important on the west from a safety standpoint.
you mean with respect to the park?
Yes.
Okay, I mean, I don't.
He was talking like even there, shift the road,
For sure. Yes.
shift the road into the park.
But we did, that was one of the things we looked at in city engineering staff, and I'm not sure if Bolton Mank reviewed it, but kind of felt that introducing a curve there might make it seem like more of a fun path. Yeah. I guess I tended to agree with that. I can see myself being a young student there. So I think it was felt that the medians, painting the lanes narrower to make you feel more constrained. And of course the plantings on the boulevard are not required by code. We're just, suggesting that as a kind of a more vertical wall too. So, and I think that the spacing of the trees may, and I don't want to, I'm no traffic engineer, but it may be more of a accident preventer than a berm itself. Because I think, I forget the spacing here, but I think these trees are 25 feet apart.
That's accurate, yep.
Yeah. When planted, of course, when they mature, they'll fill in more, but just my thoughts.
Okay, I wasn't speaking in reference to putting a curve in the road. There's mention in the Bolton and Mank about sort of a speed bumps concept, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
Park with a road going to the construction of a future road to the park?
Yeah, so Commissioner Vansky, Chair, members of the commission, so I believe we're referring to the road table that's up, which would be a pedestrian crossing from one side of Cochia to the other, where the road is tabled. Really, it acts as a speed bump that we can go over. We haven't pursued that in great detail yet, in part because of initial public works comments about plowing and maintaining the road. That's typically the reason why they're discouraged, although staff can certainly explore those options. Again, I think we have some more investigating and engineering to do on the actual design of Cochia to get a satisfactory outcome on the speed mitigation.
I mean, it seems that absent the roundabout, the options become greatly narrowed in terms of
The Carver County Sheriff on the road, let him catch a few folks. Because quite frankly, they could do it on Cochia going the other way. They could do it on 18, right? I mean, the issue exists throughout.
I like a four-way stop.
Moving the issue, right? So high school kids are high school kids, but you know, get a few of them a ticket or something.
But we're not going to get a four-way stop in this new intersection that's just north of the high school, right? There's no four-way stop that's justified by the traffic study
Yeah,
anywhere, correct?
It's likely that, I don't believe that Bolton and Mank looked at a four-way stop warrant analysis for this particular intersection, although understanding that if it's not warranted on 78th and Cochia, it's likely not warranted.
Likely not warranted for this.
Well, I read the whole Bolton and Mank report, and my thoughts on it are it's incomplete and inconclusive based on what's going to happen when this road goes in. Right now, everyone coming out of the high school is taking a left-hand turn because they have to in order to get down to whatever street it is, 80th, and then taking another left and taking another left in order to get onto Highway 5. Every single kid coming out of that high school is going to be taking a right-hand turn, shooting straight down Cochia, right to 5, so they can pop onto 5 and take a right. I don't know what the answers are. I think if you put in a table or speed bumps, they're just going to get ruined by snow plows, and the tables become dangerous situations when they're not cleared out, potentially, as kids are walking across it and they slide right or cars slide right through them into people. I don't know. I disagreed with the report. I'm not an expert. I'm not an engineer, but I'm like, I thought the only thing that made any sense was a four-way stop.
But the study did find that a two-way stop is justified.
Correct. Yeah.
And the study recommends, and the direction there would be to stop traffic on Cochia and not 78th, correct?
It would be so to stop traffic as it hits 78th Street.
So that would be a mitigating factor. I mean, I agree with Christian that that's the four-way stop that I think you get halfway there with Cochia being slowed up. And then it's the distance between the high school and that intersection is where now the risk is.
I would also add, we haven't really talked about Cochia and 5 and how that acts, that ride out of off of Cochia onto 5, how that's going to be addressed, because it's an issue.
That's in the Arboretum study.
Yeah.
They do have.
Was that talked about when I wasn't here the other day?
No, Commissioner Moore, Chair, members of the commission. So city staff does recognize, and one of our big pushes has been to get a controlled intersection at Park Cochia and 5. Historically, the response from MnDOT is, well, there's not enough cars on Cochia. So over the course of the last 2 years, at least since I've been here, our response has been, well, there's potentially houses coming that's being proposed here, which, not to bring up warrants again, but would otherwise, and they've given us preliminary indication that it would result in the full extension of Cochia would potentially trigger that warrant, and pushes up the need to have a signal or something to that end at 5 and Cochia.
What evidence do they need to support it?
Yeah,
Cars.
But doesn't this report show the cars?
How long did it take them to get Minnewash to Parkway? But
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of as someone that worked in the MnDOT traffic safety office, it is definitely a chicken and the egg thing where you're pulling your hair out because you can't wait for additional volume to be there before you do the improvement. It's backwards to me. That's my personal opinion.
So the importance of slowing down people here is even more important.
Yeah.
In my mind.
And again, I think staff's recommendation or the engineering recommendation is if some combination of mitigation at this intersection and 78th and Cochia, looking at there's more right-of-way at the 78th and Cochia intersection for potentially a roundabout that and more side volume traffic that could support the roundabout. Doing a staged approach to the Cochia lane extension.
Can I make my point on berming? I like berming on the west side. If you think about going down towards Savannah Valley south, the western side of Cochia is a ditch of probably 4 feet most of the way, and then there's a berm of at least 6 feet with a bunch of trees on it. As you get towards the north entrance of Savannah Valley, it drops down and is flat with trees. Then you've got another giant hill. I like the idea of having as much berming along that western edge to meet how it looks and to protect the neighborhood from all the traffic, noise, lights, and everything else that's going down that street. I think the east side is a little bit more difficult just with the way that the houses look to be aligned and being built. It looks like there's more shrub, trees, and vegetation there that may help out. But I guess I wouldn't jump right onto the bandwagon of not having 8-foot berms at this point in time. I'd like to see as close as possible put in place on both sides of the road. I think you can also pinch the road a little bit, as we were talking about the, excuse me if this is wrong, chicane of the road. Never used that word before. So I'd like to see some attempts at creating the berms and using a combination of shrubbery to protect the integrity of those homes on both sides of the road, including what's possibly the park.
How much berming is the neighborhood to the north that we've already approved?
Great question, Commissioner Schwarting, members of the commission.
Probably not.
So I did look that up here quickly. As you'll recall, the applicant for the Madeline Trail development brought up the same item. The ultimate outcome of that was an undulation, not a full berm across, but it was a 4 to 6 foot berm that was kind of going up and down across that whole line of Cochia.
Why not just do something consistent so you have consistency coming down Cochia between the neighborhoods, right?
I think that's what we talked about with the exception of like maybe omitting the park from that, but my contemporaries say the park is justifiable too, and I find that agreeable as well. But a level of berming seems appropriate than no berming.
If there is a consensus of the commission to bring that forward, that could certainly be added as a recommendation with the development.
I think it's warranted.
And nods. Okay.
Chair, do we feel like we have consensus on this issue of berming?
We do have consensus on that issue, I believe. Yeah, I think one of the well-defined issues that we've really come up with is the fact that there will be an issue with speed and noise at the same time. And we know that's the case, and so preventative as best we can, mitigating as best we can with design at this point. You know, I always identify what the Planning Commission does is essentially they're the research arm for the City Council. So when this goes through to the next phase, you know, most of the questions will have been answered, and most of the potential problems, hopefully, will have been solved also. So that's essentially what we're doing, and we are here to make things happen, but we recognize that we have some things to solve at the same time too. So I think that's in the overall in the area. I mean, that, you know, you look at the consulting firm on the volume of traffic, volume of cars, and you take 80 homes times, theoretically, times 2, you know, 2 vehicles, and you throw that into the mix, and that's a lot of traffic. And a open option with Cochia certainly is going to add to the mix at the same time. So for us to approve, for us to recommend going to the next step, those are the issues that we have. If we in fact agree or disagree, whichever one it is, and it's fine, on the park, what we do with the park at the same time. But if it doesn't happen now, it'll never happen. So we just literally have to say, what do we in fact want to do? What do we in fact want to tell the City Council to approve?
I think, Mr. Chair, would just to close that topic out, I think that the residents of Lake Auburn are a pretty good example of having a subdivision built and then no plan for a park, no plan for a lot, and most recently a private lot came up for sale, and the neighborhood wanted the city to buy it so they could have a park. So this just serves as an example of we have it available. The alternative is more homes, more density, and you'll never be able to get the land later on in life.
No, it's, I mean, just a personal story on that is that I formerly lived in Eden Prairie. My son was born and raised in Eden Prairie, and he now lives in Eden Prairie, and utilizing some of the same parks, same playgrounds that he utilized when he was that tall. So that's the very nature of parks. And of course, if it isn't feasible, and if if the Park and Rec director says that this is not what they want to do, well, that's a decision that they can certainly make, and we can certainly support it at the same time too. So, any other concerns on that at this point?
just gonna, I was texting with John, our engineer
So,
with Westwood.
if I could, the tree removal, and we do want to document that. We do want to have that on record, that, what was the situation with those trees?
Chair, members of the commission, the applicant has provided a tree removal and replacement plan. That
Okay.
plan does meet the city's code, and they're proposing to replace more trees than they'd be required to replace currently with the landscaping plan
Good.
as shown.
Thank you.
Thanks. So John Bender with Westwood, our engineer here, Westwood was also the engineer of Madeline Trail. And John just sent me a message clarifying that the berming for Madeline Trail was actually along 78th, not Cochia. I don't know
Yeah.
for what it's worth.
I guess we can be consistent then.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Cochia wasn't a thoroughfare at that time either.
Yeah, that's the big difference. The road to nowhere.
Highway.
Formerly a gravel road
Yeah.
or a gravel
Without
trail.
traffic.
Yeah, but you knew it
I'm
was gonna
struggling
get-
with this park personally because I'm such a visual person. I really want to see it designed, and then just struggling with like how it's going to work with a berm and like the placement of it, and that's just me personally. And so the programming needs to be right for it to be justified, and so that's I don't know if that's typical for that high level of planning.
Yeah, Commissioner Moore, Chair, members of the commission, that it's a great point. It's something that we've talked about. If the park were to proceed, the applicant would have to show some reference of what could go there. And part of that is because you need to account for hardcover and stormwater and things to that end. So that would be something that staff would work with the applicant to provide on a high-level basis, understanding that the city would have to program the park over time, but just showing some demonstration of what
You ever have a park that you just go throw the football around? You
Yeah, there's
just go
just
hang
green
out?
space.
I mean, does everything have to have, 80 pickleball courts on it? And, I mean, just a place these kids can go and hang out, right? Otherwise, your de facto park is gonna be the cul-de-sac, right? That's where they'll all play. Their yards really aren't big enough to do a ton of stuff in. Right? So it's kind of nice to have some open space if they're not ready to put some minimal equipment in there, but it's a nice place to do something. Otherwise, I suppose they could go over to the high school. Plenty of property there.
Well, on that topic, certainly Madeline Creek has some pretty wide open spaces, and there's a lot of footballs that are ironically are tossed there at the same time too. So for an older group, teen group, that would be an alternative to that.
Let's not lose sight of the fact that the existing neighborhood to the north has nothing. And to a park that allows 9 to 10 lots access to this space, which is now private property,
Yep.
to the east. So, I mean, I think that where Isaac is going and the staff of development is that, Park and Rec may not love the idea of having to plan a park sooner than they thought, but the idea of actually having the land reserved and available for the future is the benefit here. And it may not be a park turnkey day one, but if it's not available, you can't plan on something that's not there.
I agree.
I'm having a hard time recalling, like it's easy to look at this and think about who's going to benefit from this park, because it doesn't look like there's going to be a lot of parking accessibility. Could you park on Cochia?
Right. So again,
No. So I guess you can only really park to the south of the outlet. Is that the only parking opportunities? Or there may be parking on the north I don't see.
So Commissioner Murray, Chair, members of the commission. So again, with the programming of the park, if it were to be
We
shown,
could add some parking.
yeah, it would have to have parking to serve the
They have a
park.
parking lot in there,
the park when you're on the bike trail and you come underneath 5 and you end up at this little park? There's like no parking there.
To the north.
Yeah, it starts with a D or something, right? When you're coming out of something like that. There's no parking there. So.
I can't say it, but it's DIET.
Isaac, is there more flexibility about paved surface on like kind of wet soils?
Yeah, would that be a good use?
In terms of like the city utilizing that wetland space, I off the cuff, I don't know. I would imagine that it would be preferred to be avoided. Which like developers, the city's also beholden to the watershed districts wetland rules, which are probably for the best. Yeah.
So, Isaac, in terms of the parkland, I mean, there can be open space, and it sounds like there's the idea that it might be a walkthrough, it might be more natural state, but I do like the berm in terms of safety. But I mean, I'm pretty sure there's land that's owned by the city right across from my house that's undeveloped. I love it. So, is there a designation that leaves it to the future to decide what its purpose is?
I don't want to pretend to be the parks and the parks director, but my understanding of the CIP process and the programming process is it is longer, but a big component of that is that there will be people in the park, and there'll be an opportunity for public feedback for folks that are living in the area, whether it's existing residents or new residents through the development that could engage and say, hey, we want this in this park, or we want it to be open space or something to that end.
I have one more question. What's the motive for Parks and Rec to not want this park here? Do they want funds allocated somewhere else? I'm just trying to fully understand it.
Again, based on that meeting, I'll pull it back here. The reasons outlined were that the comp plan doesn't call for the park. There are adjacent parks, the delay in programming, and concern that it would be a smaller park or perceived as a tot lot.
Just surprising.
Yeah, I mean, I was there when they did the semi-annual, when Park and Rec did their semi-annual report to the city council, and it's the age-old problem. So where is the funds going to come from? It's always, and so do we do a park here, or do we do, Bavaria East or whatever?
There's going to be a lot of opportunity for parks down Victoria Drive as that gets developed.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious if they're saving resources for that. I don't know.
Yeah, I do
think what
think
we'll see here is a de facto park. If this is here and it's available, the residents will use the land like Commissioner Schwarting says, just to kick a ball around and throw a football back in park, and they'll do that for an hour or two and go home. And then later when the city can prioritize and resource it, to turn it into the standard park in the time frame of 5 to 7 years, then it gets on that list and it moves down that path. But again, just like to bring up the Lake Auburn people, they had a vacant lot that was owned by somebody, and they did exactly that. They used the vacant land as their own picnic ground and place for their kids to play, and then they got upset when a for sale sign went up for somebody trying to sell the lot. Like, there goes our park. I think here's our opportunity, and I think that planning staff is sort of saying, without trying to create an internal strife in their office on the second floor, that sort of overriding Park and Rec's decision on this parcel and want to move forward.
Yeah, and just to clarify, staff's generally supportive of the park. At the end of the day, it's the planning commission and the council, or the planning commission's recommendation and the council's decision on whether a park goes there. Obviously, the applicant's still proposing the park, so we need to reconcile what that direction is as it relates to the preliminary plat itself.
Very good.
Should we vote?
Josh, do you have any closing thoughts that you'd want to make to the commission?
No, I think we've pretty well covered it. Unless it's going to a decision that I'm not anticipating.
Thank you very much. So I think we are ready for a motion. Is there someone that would like to make a motion on this?
I'd like to make a motion that we vote on the, I'd like to recommend approval of the Brookmore preliminary plat rezoning with conditions as presented and discussed.
And have we documented all of the conditions?
Chair, members of the commission, just, or why don't we let Commissioner Moore's motion that's on the floor receive a second, if it were, and then I'll can clarify
Excellent.
what the
second that
additional conditions are.
Excellent. Yep. All those in favor? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Discussion?
Any discussion?
Do we want to add comments?
Chair, just to clarify, there is a request for consensus based on the vote to leave it as is with those staff recommended additional conditions along with berming, I believe. Do we want to just clarify what that request is, just for staff's edification for the council recommendation? What you were thinking to that end?
Berming consistent.
I think the consensus of the commission is that berming is appropriate. It doesn't necessarily have to be the 8-foot required berming, but it should be consistent with the surrounding berming that has been done with Savannah Valley to the south and then to Madeline Trail, I believe, to the northeast.
So rolling berming.
Rolling berming, I think, is consistent with our thought. Doesn't have to be 8-foot standard berming contiguous, but so some combination of a berming that with combined with plantings that are appropriate to the location that those berms will be placed relative to Kachia as a collector.
Understood. Thank you. So you have a chair, members of the commission, you have a motion and a second on the floor.
All those in favor signify by saying aye to the motion.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you. So it now goes to the next step.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you for your work with us at the same time too, Josh. Thank you. Thank you. Very good. We will now move on to the miscellaneous section of our agenda, and I get the first go. And I would like to thank everyone for either disagreeing or agreeing, and that's what we're here for. We're not here to rubber stamp. We're not here to all agree. That's how we're going to get to the answer is by debating and majority rules. So thank you very much for that. Does staff have any miscellaneous?
Nothing from staff, Mr. Chair.
Superb. And city council meeting attendance. Who's up for the last city council meeting?
I had 5-9. Do you like my report? Got it. So I started off with the city council workshop where they discussed ARPA. Who knows what ARPA is? American Rescue Plan Act. And there are so many different rules and so many different nuances of that, but they went through what the city of Victoria would like to spend the money on. It looks like we're spending it on water meters, water infrastructure, fiber to the lift stations, possibly some money spent on not scuba gear cleaning, but fire department scuba-like gear cleaning, and possibly money on the mezzanine build-out at the fire department. Then we jumped into the results of the community survey, which I found to be quite interesting. They sent out 2,700 surveys, 807 responded, the total of 31%. Highlights of that are Victoria is a place that people have a high quality of life, and the biggest issue was the economy. Mobility and the ability to get places without using a car was higher than most places, which I thought was a little bit wrong just based on public transportation, but I'm not there to argue. It's a safer place than other national benchmarks of similar places. We have more parks and regional and neighborhood parks than most other locations. We got back to one of the things that I thought was kind of funny is that ranking of the biggest issues, the economy was number 1, parking was number 7. Taxes were 8. I'm like, whew, it seems like those should be flipped around. Anyway, moving on. So then that ended. We went to the council meeting itself. We did the typical, the approval of this, approval of that. There was recognition of the May 17th Senior Committee and Expo at Lions Park. I don't know that much about it, but if you're interested, dig it up. May 18th, there's a Wasserman Park, Wasserman Preserve tour from 3 to 6. And May 15th to May 23rd was designated Public Works National Public Works Week. Yes? Questions?
Sorry, none for me, thank you.
Then we got into 6.1, which was discussion regarding the Downtown West project. We dug into it. We went through all the same stuff that we talked about over and over again. And basically we're talking about it as an apartment complex that's a catalyst project for all of Downtown West. And the big vote of the day was to vote on if we should have a public hearing to move it further along in the process. And the council all voted for yes, we should have a public hearing for it. And that was it. Over and at.
Did they talk to about retail below the residential still?
They talked about it and they basically said it wasn't going to happen. There was also discussion about the fact that they had talked to just about every grocery store and grocery store chain around, and at this point in time there wasn't any interest in doing that.
Okay. Thank you for that feedback.
You're welcome.
Now is the survey results on the website?
Yeah, their survey results are someplace. Where can we get those, Isaac?
Commissioner Pedersen, Chair, members of the commission, I believe the survey results are on the city's website. I will pull it up on the screen here, maybe.
I'm very fascinated by this.
I'm interested to know the 2 through 7 now.
Exactly.
I know, I'm like, what would it be?
Yeah. So there's a community survey page here that you can search that goes through kind of all the different benchmarks and some past survey material. Oh, sorry.
It's right on the right.
We can review them all together right now. See how badly I reported. 79 pages.
Oh, for crying out. No, 79 pages. Is there
At your
cliff
convenience.
notes?
Where's the end executive summary? notes?
Executive summary.
Are you kidding? Come on.
Good luck getting your residents to read all this.
I would recommend if the commission and members of the public watching are interested to do a recap of or take a look back on YouTube and kind of watch the summary, because it is really interesting. Just as an aside, one of the interesting things from census data too that I noticed and kind of picked out is that the youth population of Victoria is exceedingly high based on the last census. It's like at 25+% individuals under 18, which is kind of cool as you look at a younger community. Kind of breaks the norm of a lot of towns in the metro. So that's my fun fact.
And that's all valuable information for us, isn't it? You know, to know what's going on, essentially, you know, to know what people, what the residents are thinking. You know, many of us are kind of circulate around in various different activities, but you know, what are they saying in the privacy of their own home without anyone around? So yeah, I think that'll be a good exercise that I will go through at the same time too. Any other business?
I think they're valuable, but I think they sometimes give you some pretty strange results. Like 7th on the list was parking and 8th on the list was taxes. I mean, from what I hear from people in the community, those are top 3 all the time. And to see them fall that far down on the list of issues within Victoria was a little bit interesting to me.
Yeah, well, I think the economics, the economic level, a lot of times will really skew that. And you know, I think if one were to do that in a different part of the metropolitan area, that numbers would come out a little bit different. But
Maybe you start to accept some things. Right? I mean, you know, parking is going to be a challenge. So.
I think
Now,
the
in a
time
few
the
years-
survey was sent out, the Dow was 36,000, and our taxes have not reflected our increase in home values yet, so
That's just it.
it's on its way,
Some of these homes selling for higher prices, it's going to drive taxes up.
without question.
Unfortunately, it is what it is. So that number may be creeping up.
Now, we may lower our tax rate within the city based on our budget, so your net out-of-pocket cost to acquire city services may remain relatively unchanged, but it's not going to stop the tsunami that's going to go to the county and to the schools on your assessed valuation. And sadly, the city survey is going to get taken to task on that aspect of taxes being raised.
certainly in my business, stocks and bonds, inflation, quite frankly, is public enemy number one. You know, I mean, in the scheme of how the numbers work out. So, any other issues? Any other concerns? I would call for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
A second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We are officially adjourned. Thank you very much.